When I first came here, we had a few scattered film classes. Some colleagues and I eventually organized them into a film minor, which started up in 2001. And in 2010, we were able to develop it into a film major. And the trip to Sundance as a study away course, in a lot of ways, to me, feels like it's when the major really came of age, that we weren't just offering classes on campus, but that we were able to get students out in the world of the film industry.
So I came on board the film program in the fall of this year, 2014, and started teaching introduction. I was lucky enough, they asked me to teach introduction to film, which I'll be doing again this fall. And the official title is Film Festival Experience Sundance. And the inception of that was that we wouldn't just go to Sundance. We'd go, we'd leave it open. So Sundance has, from our research, because we looked at going to Cannes, we looked at going to the LA Film Festival. We're actually currently researching going to the Edinburgh Film Festival, which happens in June, I think, yeah, June. Mm-hmm. So it'd be a summer study abroad class. But it's funny that the more and more we research these different festivals, the more we realize Sundance really was so student-friendly and perfect for our students, for any students to go to. So we got really lucky that we chose to go there first.
One of the big advantages is that it takes place pretty much coinciding with WKU winter term. And so what we realized we could do is develop a class that would be the extent of the winter term, where half of it would be online with the students studying and researching the background on Sundance, but also independent film more generally. And then the other half would be flying to Park City, Utah, which is where Sundance takes place, and having that on-site experience at the festival. And, you know, Sundance just comes with that brand recognition. One of our big goals was to expose students to a really in-depth experience with something outside of Hollywood, the independent film scene, but also that was, you know, still accessible and familiar to them, you know, an American festival and that sort of thing. And you could probably talk more about the independent film angle.
Well, yeah, you know, and I kind of feel like mainstream cinema, Hollywood cinema, is what they've grown up on. Being Americans, they've grown up watching Hollywood. So, and also that's highlighted in their classes here. It's highlighted in the textbooks we adopt. So it's really nice to give them something different. If we were teaching this at Western, it would probably be an American independent cinema class. But it's so nice to be able to add that study away component, the Sundance. And Sundance started, I don't remember, it's been going on, I think...
It was its 30th anniversary when we were there this last year.
Yeah, so, yeah, and I would argue it's probably one of the premier film festivals in the world. Sure. So we're really lucky to be able to take students, Western students there. So there's a parallel film festival that we actually didn't know that much about, called Slamdance. And
it's also in Park City at the same time as Sundance.
Which I think is pretty smart.
Yes.
So it's a smaller, and I think I would agree, it's more independent, and you know that from the selections that the Slamdance committees make. They're not quite so mainstream films, more experimental, obviously very independent. And so our students got a chance to not only go to Sundance films, they got to go to Slamdance films. And the Slamdance films were cheaper. You buy, I think a ticket to a Slamdance film was $12, as opposed to I think 22 or 20 for Sundance. But it was wonderful, and so such a nice variety. And you got to do this at Sundance films, but Slamdance was a much smaller room. It was all in one hotel, whereas Sundance has at least 5 different venues. And sometimes you have to travel by bus to get there. But the nice thing about Slamdance is that most of the time the directors, producers, some of the actors were right there in the room watching with you. And that's what happens at Sundance. You go to the films, you get to see the directors, but that doesn't happen in every single film.
Right, and also you'd be sharing the director and actor with like 350 other people.
Yeah.
Whereas at Slamdance it was usually a much smaller crowd.
Yeah.
So it's cool that the students got to do a little bit of both and
judge for themselves whether Sundance is too commercial or...
And a couple of the students who were more devoted to that more experimental independent, they just camped out at Slamdance.
Yeah. One of the things I think that's the Sundance Film Festival course speaks to is the value of a liberal arts education. This class, I think, does something special in that it bridges production studies with film studies. You know, two different areas that we teach here at Western. So, you know, we start off, as Dr. Hovet said, with an online portion where they're reading very heavily, watching films, writing journals, and discussing films online. And then we move on to that on-site portion. So, you know, we have that academic side, this film studies side, whether it be watching films, being exposed to films, and then we've got the production side where, you know, several of our students, when we got on site, got to meet producers, they got to meet directors, they got to have impromptu interviews with not just film but with television personalities. What I loved personally is when students would come back from, you know, and most of the time we'd see them at night or in between films during the day, and I loved the fact they'd come back and say, I got to sit down with the director of this film and talk about how it was done, and they were just glowing. It was a wonderful educational experience.
I think the most pleasant surprise for me, having not taken students there before, was, you know, I knew that they'd be able to attend a lot of great screenings and see the cutting edge, you know, independent films that are, you know, going to be released in 2014, but I was not aware of how much access they would have to people to chat with in the industry. And, you know, just running into people was so fabulous. And Park City is a small place. It's not that difficult to do. Of course, it still takes a little bit of luck. But Sundance also has built in some great series of panels and workshops so that you can, and almost all of them are free. It doesn't matter what kind of pass or anything you have, although our pass got us into pretty much anything anyway. But instead of showing a film, it might just be, they have something called the Filmmakers Lodge, and a small room where, you know, maybe 50 people would sit and there'd be a panel of 3 or 4 people, whether they were directors, producers, you know, behind the scenes people, where you could sit and listen and ask questions to these people on the inside. I think another thing that speaks to the sort of liberal arts aspect of this course is that it's very interdisciplinary. Now, it can sound super specialized, the Sundance Film Festival. If you're not a film student, you know, what would be the connection? But we were actually able to offer it not just as a film course, it was also an English course, a pop culture course, and a gender and women's studies credit. And that's because, you know, film is, even if it's a more specialized festival like Sundance, I mean, film is a very, you know, broad and familiar sort of ground to study culture. And so you're not only learning about Sundance Film Festival, but you know, we had our students do a lot of journal entries and a lot of things on the films they viewed about what are these films telling us about, you know, culture and the world in 2014.
I think we had 3 students who chose to get the gender and women's studies electives, and so for those 3, I made sure that I was with them one-on-one, which is also a benefit of a study aware, study abroad class, is I was able to go with them one-on-one to see a film that had to do with gender issues. So we went that night and went to the Women in Film panel, and it was fantastic. We got to see women who are starting programs on just using the internet. We got to see women directors on the panel. We got to see women who are working in television, directing episodes or creating pilot programs. And it was a wonderful experience. It was a very intimate, very small crowd, and they were sitting up there just talking. I think it was an hour and a half, and so it was fantastic. And Kayla and I were scribbling down notes, and as soon as it was over, we left and we ran into an entire director and crew of a film that we had both seen earlier, the Foxy Merkins, and got pictures with them and talked to them about their issues. And it was, you know, and that was an LGBTQ film. So it was, I mean, anywhere you went, it was like a constant educational experience.
Yeah. You know, we have a diverse student body, but, you know, most of them have not spent a lot of time like on either coast, you know, rubbing shoulders with people in the media industry, so to get them there and do that. And I mean, we had students who in their blog wrote about how it was the first time they were ever on an airplane. You know, first time they had really spent that, you know, long and far away from their families. So it was a really great experience for them. We also had students who showed up with like a stack of business cards and were like handing things out. We had a student sell some of his pictures to paparazzi. Yes. He got some pictures of Robert Redford.
Sold it.
And you know,
helped him pay for the trip.
Some of them were networking. This was one of the coolest things. One of the films that got a lot of attention at Sundance was a film called Hellion, directed by a female director, Kat Candler. And several of our students went to the premiere and absolutely fell in love with it, stayed for the question and answer period, stayed after that so that they could kind of come up and talk to Kat Candler, and ask her to come here to WKU. Because each spring we have a film festival here called the Western Kentucky Film Festival. It's always the last week of the spring classes, where we show our students' films, the ones that they've been working on all year. We have a high school portion of it where we bring in hundreds of high school students up to campus to see our facilities and show their films, run a contest, give out awards, all that kind of thing.
We bring in guest speakers.
And so we try to bring in guest speakers, and as our film program has become a bit more established, and as we have some alumni who are actually out there, you know, doing great things in the industry, we're bringing people back to speak. Well, Wes Manicky, one of our students who met Kat Candler, said, "Why don't you come and speak at the WKU Film Festival?" And she said, "Yes, I will." And so we had Kat Candler come to campus.
Yeah.
For several days she visited, I don't know how many classes. She was so generous with her time. She went
to dinner with students.
Went to 2 or 3 or 4 different meals with students, went to classes, and then gave a public showing of some of her film.
The Western Kentucky Film Festival, as Dr. Hovet said, happens in the spring. And one of the nice things that we do is we have a guest, typically a guest director, and we do a one-day film shoot. So the students get exposure to a director, a different director. They get to fill the roles in the crew. It's an incredible hands-on learning experience. And then they produce a film, and we do this all in one day.
And we have a little contest. The students write screenplays, and one of those, we send them to the director or to other judges, and one screenplay is chosen, and that's what we shoot for that one day. So this points to the fact that going to Sundance is actually a professional networking opportunity for these students. And that's one of the reasons we're really committed to try to keep doing Sundance, because of its sort of locus of all this stuff, but also to hopefully spread to some other film festivals. And we have active relationships with the Nashville Film Festival. We send students down there for volunteers. WKU is actually a university sponsor of the Nashville Film Festival. And also the Louisville International Film Festival, which is a great place for them to meet. So those are more local ones, but getting these national ones obviously just steps it up to a different level.
And you don't have to be a student to go. There's something called the American Traveler Program. And so you can be alum, you can be somebody in the community. We've actually recruited students from other universities to go with us. But I think it comes down to money in order to get these students into the program and out to Park City. And of course, they get 3 credits, college credits, so that applies to whatever major they want, like English, pop culture, women's studies, or film. Yeah.